what you want. Come feel this sensation. Sliding smooth and low like a secret invitation. So smooth. Every tone whispers soft. Can you feel it? The undertow. Pull me closer, baby. You know where I wanna go. Ooh, feel it, baby, nice and slow. Ooh, yeah, I let your rhythm consume my soul. Yeah. Ooh, yeah, listen to my sweet surrender. Now that feels so soft and oh, so tender. Let your body sway, baby, my voice has you gliding. Feel it, whispers in your ear, feel the thrill as they're colliding. Steamy tone, sultry breeze, oh, it's got you mesmerized. Follow the sound, darling, I'll touch you where it tantalizes. Ooh, feel it, baby, nice and slow. Yeah.
Just like a man, you start talking about being nice and slow, and then it just cuts off.
Yeah,
just
done.
just
Oh, we're gonna go all night long, baby.
Well, I gotta go.
I need a sandwich.
where my sandwich at?
I'll be right back. I'm gonna go get some cigarettes for the stove.
Hello, chat. Hello, chat. Now, if we're not intentionally ignoring you, we've minimized our chat screen, so we're paying attention to the story. We're going to read you this wonderful story. It's Peter Pan, or better known as Wendy and Peter, or Peter and Wendy. I forget which comes first, the chicken or the egg.
Probably.
But we do know that.
Well, the female
Peter
should come first, but
it's probably
you know
Peter.
how it is.
Well,
Doesn't always happen, though, does it?
Yeah.
no, doesn't.
Apparently my mic didn't mute whenever I got up because it was like, "Hey, kid, bad dad, I need a hug." I'm like, "All right, fine."
We didn't hear it.
Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about, but okay.
Nothing. Heard nothing.
Well, we will say that all children, except one, grow up. They soon know they will grow up, and the way Wendy knew this was one day when she was 2 years old. She was playing in a garden, and she plucked another flower and ran with it to her mother. I suppose she must have looked rather delightful, for Mrs. Darling put her hand to her heart and cried.
Oh, why can't you remain like this forever?
This was all that passed between them on the subject, but henceforth Wendy knew that she must grow up. You always know after you are two is the beginning of the end. Of course, they lived at 14, and until Wendy came, her mother was the chief one. She was a lovely lady with a romantic mind and such a sweet mocking mouth.
Very much.
Her romantic mind was like the tiny boxes, one within the other, that came from the puzzling East. However many you discover, there is always one more, and her sweet, mocking mouth had one kiss on it that Wendy could never get, though there it was, perfectly conspicuous in the right-hand corner. The way Mr. Darling won her was this. The many gentlemen who had been boys when she was a girl discovered simultaneously that they loved her, and they all ran to her house to propose to her, except Mr. Darling, who took a cab and nipped it first, and so he got her. He got all of her.
Yeah, he did.
Except
Was he going taxi?
Except-
God, that.
Oh, it gets worse because he got all of her except for the innermost box and kiss.
The box is fat.
That's disappointing.
Well, he never knew about the box. And
Well, you don't.
I imagine the whole box within a box metaphor is just like a way of saying like chicks these days are like they're like a Firefox window. They've got like a billion tabs open, but
Nah,
no,
just
because
saying you don't want to bottom out.
No.
Yeah, you don't want to bottom out that box.
wow, I tried to take it a different direction. Y'all just,
Well,
okay,
we'll talk about the
you know what,
birds and bees later.
All right, you know what, that's what we want.
What the fuck do you think you are? Thinking we're gonna get all philosophical up in here.
For real.
Here's my box you're talking about. Right, calm it down now.
Get into that box. It was a tight box. Wendy thought Napoleon could have gotten it, but I can picture him trying. And then going off in a passion, slamming the door.
That's what happens when you don't get the box.
Yeah. Mr. Darling used to boast to Wendy that her mother not only loved him, but respected him. Yeah, right. He was one of those deep ones who knew about stocks and shares. Of course, no one really knows, but he quite seemed to know. And he often said stocks were up and shares were down in a way that would have made any woman respect him. Mrs. Darling was married in white. That means she is a virgin.
She wore a
And
white dress.
And it furnished
All right.
the books perfectly.
And nary a shotgun inside.
That's right.
It would have been a musket.
A musket.
So you do have a running chance. As if it were a game.
You run a zigzag pattern, you'll be okay.
I'm up, they see me, I'm down. I'm up, they see me, I'm down. That's what you do. You look like a little zigzag. I'm up, they see me, I'm down. You plant your dick in the dirt, and then you jump up and do it all over again.
What a clean stick, thank you.
Not so much as a Brussels sprout was missing. By and by, whole cauliflowers dropped out. And instead of them were pictures of babies without faces. She drew them when she would have been totting up. They were Mrs. Darling's guesses, and Wendy came first, then John, then Michael. For a week or two after that, Wendy came. It was doubtful whether they would be able to keep her, as she was another mouth to feed. Mr. Darling was frightfully proud of her, but he was very honorable, and he sat on the edge of Mrs. Darling's bed, holding her hand and calculating expenses while she looked at him imploringly.
Yeah, that's how it goes. You start thinking of how much this shit's going to cost.
Yeah.
The thing we got to keep it now.
It's a good thing you weren't an ugly baby. I'd have sold your ass.
You should have gone over the hill like one of them Spartans.
That circus was in town. They were looking at you with a little glint in their eye.
And the circus was here 9 months ago. Coincidence? I don't know.
Yeet.
It is Mrs. Darling's bed after all.
Well, she wanted to risk it, come what might, but that was not his way. His way was with a pencil and a piece of paper, and if she confused him with suggestions, he had to begin at the beginning again.
Now, don't interrupt.
He would beg of her.
I have £1.17 here and 2 and 6 of the offers. I can cut off my coffee at the office. Say 10 shillings, make 2 9 and 6. With your 18 and 3 makes 3 9 7. And with 5 not in my checkbook makes 897. Who's that moving? 897. Carry 7. Don't speak. My own hand pound you let me. To the man that came with the door. Quiet, child. Dot and carry, child. There, you've done it. Did I say 9 and 7? Yes, I said 9 and 7. Well, the question is, can we try for a year 997? I don't know.
Of course we can, George.
She cried, but she was prejudiced on Wendy's favor, and he was really the grander character of the two.
I remember Mumps.
He warned her almost threateningly, and off he went again.
Mumps £1, that is to say, I have put down. I dare say it'll be more like 30 shillings. Don't speak measles, 1 in 5. German measles, half a guinea, makes 2, 15, 6. Don't wiggle your finger, whooping cough, say 15 shillings.
And so on it went, and it added up differently each time, but at last Wendy just got through, with mumps reduced to 12.6 and the 2 kinds of measles treated as one. There was the same excitement over John, and Michael had even a narrower squeak, but both were kept, and soon you might have seen the 3 of them going in a row to Miss Folsom's kindergarten school, accompanied by her nurse. Well, Mrs. Darling loved to have everything just so, and Mr. Darling had a passion for being exactly like his neighbors, square. So, of course, they had a nurse, as they were poor. Owing to the amount of milk the children drank, the nurse was a prim Newfoundland dog called Nana, who had belonged to no one in particular until the Darlings engaged her. She had always thought children important, however, and the Darlings had become acquainted with her Kensington Gardens, where she spent most of her spare time, peeping into perambulators, and was much hated by careless nursemaids whom she followed to their homes and complained of to their mistresses. She proved to be quite a treasure of a nurse. How thorough she was at bath time, and up at any moment of the night if one of her charges made the slightest cry. Of course, her kennel was in the nursery. She had a genius for knowing when a cough was a thing to have patience with and when it needs stocking around your throat. She believed to her last day in old-fashioned remedies like rhubarb leaf, and made sounds of contempt over all this newfangled talk about germs and so on. It was a lesson in propriety to see her escorting the children to school, walking sedately by their side when they were well behaved, and butting them back in line or just smacking them upside the head if they strayed. On John's footer days, she never once forgot his sweater, and she usually carried an umbrella in her mouth in case of rain. Why would she carry it in her mouth?
It's a dog.
Dog.
Because it's a
She's
dog,
a
man.
dog, man.
Well, why was she smacking him upside the head?
Because it's a
She's
dog.
smart dog. She's a smart
Where
dog.
would she faster?
There is room in the basement.
Of arsenic.
Since she was a bit sedated, if she's on the rugs.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Is it a
There's room in the
Teresa
basement of
French
Miss Balsam's school
thing?
where the nurses wait. They sat on forms while Nana lay on the floor, but that was the only difference. They affected to ignore her as of an inferior social status to themselves, and she despised their light talk. She resented visits to the nursery from Miss Darling's friends, but if they did come, she first whipped off Michael's pinafore and put them into one with blue braiding, and smoothed out Wendy and made a dash at John's hair. Well, no nursery could possibly have been conducted more correctly, and Mr. Darling knew it. Yet he sometimes wondered uneasily whether the neighbors talked. He had his position in the city to consider. Nana also troubled him in another way. He had sometimes a feeling that she did not admire him.
I know she admires you tremendously, George.
Mrs. Darling would assure him, and then she would sign to the children to be specifically nice to father. Lovely's dances followed, in which the only servant, Liza, was sometimes allowed to join the threesome. Such a midget she looked in her long skirt and maid's cap, though she had sworn when engaged that she would never see 10 again. The gaiety of these romps, the gayest of all, was Mrs. Darling.
Ah, that explains the threesome.
It does.
And the rocks.
Well,
much
she would
romping. Oh my god.
she would pirouette so wildly that all you could see of her was the kiss. And then if you had
Oh,
dashed
my.
at her, you might have got it. There was never a simpler, happier family until the coming of Peter Pan.
Ugh.
So many different ways that could be taken.
So she'd be okay to her warning of brace yourself, Effie. She likes it when I run at her.
You gotta go full speed now. Or it just won't work.
You ain't running, you ain't coming.
Mrs. Darling first heard of Peter when she was tidying up her children's minds. It's the nightly custom of every good mother after her children are asleep to rummage in their minds and put things straight for next morning, repacking into the proper places the many articles that have wandered during the day, if you could keep awake. But of course you can't. You would see your own mother doing this, and you would find it very interesting to watch her. It's quite like tidying up drawers. She would see her on her knees and
Well, this took a
Jokes just write themselves.
I expect lingering humorously over some of your contents, wondering where on earth you had picked this thing up. Making discoveries sweet and not so sweet, press this to her cheek as if this were a nice kitten, and hurriedly stowing that out of sight. When you wake up in the morning, the naughtiness and the evil passions with which you went to bed have been folded up small and placed at the bottom of your mind, and on the top, beautifully aired, or spread out your prettier thoughts ready for you to put on.
Well, they had to clean up afterwards, you know? They
Well,
didn't want the kids waking up seeing that stuff.
No, you don't.
Open the windows, get that stank out.
Smells like sex and candy in here.
Oh my god.
Hanging around
The kids are waking up.
downtown by myself. I've had too much time.
I don't know whether you've seen the map of a person's mind. Doctors sometimes draw maps of other parts of you, and your own map can become intensely interesting. But
Yeah, it
quit
can.
trying to draw a map of a child's mind, which is not only confused, but keeps going round all the time. There are zigzag lines on it, just like your temperature on a card, and those are probably roads in the island, for the Neverland is always more or less an island with astonishing splashes of color here and there, and coral reefs and rakish-looking craft on the offing, and savages and lonely liars, and gnomes who are mostly tailors, and caves through which a river runs, princes
does.
with 6 elder brothers, and a hut fast going to decay, and one very small old lady with a hook nose. It would be an easy map if that were all, but there is also the first day of school, religion, fathers, the round pond, needlework, murderers, hangings, verbs that take the dative, chocolate pudding day, getting into braces, say 99, 3 pence for pulling out your tooth yourself, and so on. And either these are part of the island, or they are another map showing through. And it's all rather confusing, especially as nothing ever will stand still.
Yeah,
Of course,
confusing. That's a word for it. Jesus.
yes. Of
Y'all,
course,
the
the
old
Neverland.
timers speak. I can't keep up. Goddamn.
Hey, it's still
The
better than
Never-
some of the other stuff we've read.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay,
yes.
you know, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
At least this is going somewhere.
Yeah.
It's all enigmatic.
Oh.
It's ethereal, man.
Ethereal,
It's ethereal.
Crow Ben.
Welcome, Phoenix. Welcome, Phoenix. Good to see you. Nice to see you.
Hey,
Good
hey,
evening.
hey.
Hello. Good evening, all. And then, of course, we have We have Tammy Bugard. I needed a pick-me-up, so I came here to
Nice.
learn.
Hell
Yep, we're good for it.
Tammy.
We are. Well, of course, the Neverland's a very good deal. John's, for instance, had a lagoon with flamingos flying over it, in which John was shooting, while Michael, who was very small, had a flamingo with lagoons flying over it, and John lived in a boat turned upside down on the sands. Michael in a wigwam, Wendy in a house of leaves, deftly sewed together, and John had no friends. Michael had friends at night. Wendy had a pet wolf forsaken by its parents, but on the whole, the Neverlands had a family resemblance, as if they stood in a row, and you could say of them that they each have each other's nose and so forth. On these magic shores, children are at play, are forever beaching their coracles. Okay. We too have been there. We can still hear the sound of the surf, though we shall land no more.
I'm starting to
Of
understand
all-
Michael Jackson so much better now.
Yeah.
Especially the
Yeah.
others' noses part.
Yeah.
Let me get your nose. I got your nose.
Bubbles, don't be ignorant. Don't be ignorant.
I got your nose. That's not my nose.
Ew. Ew.
Of all the delectable islands in Neverland, it's snuggest and most compact, not large and sprawly, with tedious distances between one adventure and another, but nicely crammed. When you play at it by day with chairs and a tablecloth, it is not in the least alarming, but in 2 minutes before you go to sleep, it becomes very real. That is why there are nightlights. Occasionally in her travels, though, through her children's mind, Mrs. Darling found things she could not understand, and of these quiet the most perplexing was the word Peter. She knew of no Peter, and yet he was here and there in John and Michael's mind, while Wendy began to be scrawled all over with him. The name stood out in bolder letters than any of the other words, and Miss Darling gazed as she felt an oddly cocky appearance. That
Yes,
is
it-
Diva.
That's Diva.
Steve.
Oh, yes, he is rather cocky.
Wendy admitted with regret. Her mother had been questioning her.
But who is he, my pet?
Oh, he is Peter Pan. You know, Mother.
Well, now at first Miss Darling did not know, but after thinking back into her childhood, she remembered a Peter Pan who was said to live with the fairies. Okay. There were odd stories about him. As that when
Just
children
outside
died,
San Francisco.
part of
Or
Oh my
Greenwich
God.
Village.
There were odd stories about him, as that when children died, he went part of the way with them, so that they should not be frightened. She had believed in him at the time, but now that she was married and full of sense, she quite doubted whether there was any such person.
Besides,
Grim Reaper?
She said to Wendy.
he would be grown up by this time.
Oh, no, he hasn't grown up.
Wendy assured her confidently.
And he's just my size.
She meant that he was her size in both mind and body.
Hey.
She didn't know how she knew, but ooh,
She just-
knew.
She knew. She
He
knew.
fits just right.
Just my size.
My talk came late.
Like Goldilocks.
What do you mean you saw him first?
Just
Mom?
right.
Right.
Oh, God.
Mrs. Darling consulted Mr. Darling, but he smiled. Pedo,
Mark my words.
he said.
It is some nonsense Nana's been putting into their heads. Just the sort of idea a dog would have. Leave it alone, it will blow over.
But it would not blow over. As soon as the troublesome boy gave Mrs. Darling quite a shock. Children have the strangest adventures without being troubled by them, For instance, they may remember to mention a week after the event happened that when they were in the wood, that they met their dead father and had a game with him. It was this casual way that Wendy one morning made a disquieting revelation. Some leaves of a tree had been found on the nursery floor, which certainly were not there when the children went to bed. And Mrs. Darling was puzzling over them when Wendy said with a tolerant smile,
Oh, I do believe that is Peter again.
Whatever do you mean, Wendy?
Oh,
Tell.
it's so naughty of him not to wipe his feet.
Wendy said,
Oh,
sighing.
yeah.
She was a tidy child. She explained in quite a matter-of-fact way that she thought Peter sometimes came to the nursery in the night and sat on the foot of her bed and played on his pipes to her.
He's a watcher.
He's playing his pipes again.
I like sitting in the corners and on the foot of beds.
It's a good thing
Well,
it's a good thing she's tidy. She can clean up afterwards.
Unfortunately, she never woke, so she didn't know how she knew. It might have been the mess. She just knew.
Why is my hair always sticky when I wake up in the morning?
I slipped
I
and
just
fell.
don't get it.
Why's my eye always
The
red?
sheets are all crunchy.
Why are my eyes always glued shut in the morning?
What's this all over the teddy bear? This will never come out.
What nonsense you talk, Precious? Sorry. Precious is a word we use in the valleys a lot.
Oh.
No one can get in the house without knocking.
I think he comes in by the window.
My love is 3 floors up.
Were it not the leaves at the foot of the window, Mother?
It was quite true. The leaves had been found very near the window. Miss Darling did not know what to think, for it all seemed so natural to Wendy that you could not dismiss it by saying she had been dreaming.
My child, why did you not tell me of this before?
I forgot.
Said Wendy lightly. She was in a hurry to get her breakfast. Oh, surely she must have been dreaming. But on the other hand, there were the leaves. Mrs. Darling examined them very carefully. They were skeleton leaves, but she was sure they did not come from any tree that grew in England. She crawled about the floor, peering at it with a candle for marks of a strange foot. She rattled the poker up the chimney and tapped the walls. She let down a tape from the window to the pavement, and it was a sheer drop of 30 feet, without so much as a sprout to climb up by. Well, certainly Wendy had been dreaming, but Wendy had not been dreaming, as the very next night showed, the night on which the extraordinary adventures of these children may be said to have begun. On that night we speak of, all the children were once more in their bed. It happened to be Nana's evening off, and Mrs. Darling had bathed them and sung to them till one by one they had let go her hand and slid away into the land of sleep. All were looking so safe and cozy that she smiled at her fears now and sat down tranquilly by the fire to sew. It was something for Michael, who on his birthday was getting into shirts. The fire was warm, however, and the nursery dimly lit by 3 nightlights, and presently the sewing lay on Mrs. Darling's lap. Then her head nodded on, oh, so gracefully. She was asleep. Look at the 4 of them, Wendy and Michael over there, John here, and Mrs. Darling by the fire. There should have been a 4th nightlight. While she slept, she had a dream. She dreamt that the Neverland had come too near, and that strange boy had broken through from it. He did not alarm her, for she thought she had seen him before in the faces of many women who have no children. Perhaps he is to be found in the faces of some mothers also, but in her dream, he had rent the film that obscures the Neverland, and she saw Wendy and John and Michael peeping through the gap. Do you want to continue on there, Volstorm?
Yeah. The dream by itself would have been a trifle. But when she was dreaming, the window of the nursery blew open, and a boy did drop on the floor. He was accompanied by a strange light, no bigger than your fist, which darted about the room like a living thing. And I think it must have been this light that awakened Mrs. Darling. She started with a cry and saw the boy, and somehow she knew at once that he was Peter Pan. If you or I or Wendy had been there, we should have seen that he was very like Mrs. Darling's kiss. He was a lovely boy, clad in skeleton leaves and the juices that ooze out of the trees. But the most entrancing thing about him was that he had all of his first teeth.
It's sap, I swear.
Sap, I swear. When he saw she was grown up, he gnashed the little pearls at her. What the hell does that mean?
It's pearly whites.
So
Here's my
grown. He's grown, but he has baby teeth. That's creepy.
Yes.
That's creepy.
That is really creepy.
So,
Yeah.
Nash, like, so he like went at her, like, growled.
Tell me
like a
again,
dog
he's
or
not the bad guy. Come on.
Yeah.
He's a little demon.
He is a little demon. He's Pan.
Yeah.
These little naked fairies flying
Oh.
all over the place.
Look, they're not naked. They have wings. They have wings and they have glitter. They're not naked.
Tinkerbell.
God.
I'd like to ruin that little fly.
Whoa! Wow! What? That's the turn.
You can't do that to
Fly
Tim.
right for a month.
Well, that's what they make bug zappers for, isn't
That's
it?
right.
You can't zap Tim.
Just sitting out you sit down on your back porch, you hear oh look,
Cheese in it.
Tinkerbell.
Look, we got her stunned. Quick, get Yamaha.
Yamaha, I reckon you better get out here and fix this.
Oh, you fix
When they
it.
lie still like
Hey, bring a 6-pack out of the fridge while you're at it. I like to watch.
After that whole incident, we decided to wire up the old bug zapper to 220 and see what happens.
Best thing I did was tie it to that car battery.
You said it could take down an elephant. Well,
That's right. That's right. We ain't tried it yet, but it worked on the dog, let me tell you.
Unana.
Mrs. Darling screamed, and as if in answer to a bell, the door opened, and Nana entered, returned from her evening out. She growled and sprang at the boy, who leapt lightly through the window. Of course he did. Again, Mrs. Darling screamed, this time in distress for him, for she thought he was killed, and she ran down into the street to look for his little body. But it was not there, and she looked up. And in the black night she could see nothing but what she had thought was a shooting star. She returned to the nursery and found Nana with something in her mouth, which proved to be the boy's shadow. As he leapt at the window, Nana had closed it quickly, too late for it to catch up. But his shadow had not had time to get out. Slam went the window and snapped it off. You may be sure Mrs. Darling examined the shadow carefully, but it was quite the ordinary kind.
So she did.
Why are you walking so funny? It got
Why are you
snapped
walking
off
so
in the
funny?
window.
she done snapped off my shadow.
Oh, basic bitch. Nana had no doubt of what was the best thing to do with this shadow. She hung it out the window, meaning,
He's sure to come back. Oh, is this Nana?
Yeah, it's you.
He is sure to come back for it. Let us put it where he can get it easily without disturbing the children.
but unfortunately, Mrs. Darling could not leave it hanging out at the window. It looked so like the washing and lowered the whole tone of the house. She thought of showing it to Mr. Darling, but he was totting up winter greatcoats for John and Michael with a wet towel around his head to keep his brain clear. Interesting. And it seemed a shame to trouble him. Besides, she knew exactly what he would say.
It all comes of having a dog for a nurse.
She decided to roll the shadow up and put it away carefully in a drawer until a fitting opportunity came for telling her husband. Ah, me. The opportunity came a week later on that never-to-be-forgotten Friday. Of course it was a Friday. Wellesley.
I ought to have been especially careful on a Friday.
She used to say afterwards to her husband, while perhaps Nana was on the other side of her, holding her hand.
No.
Mr. Darling always said,
I'm responsible for it all. George Darling did it. Mea culpa, mea culpa.
he had a classical education.
If that's what you call it.
Uh-huh. They sat this night after night, recalling that fatal Friday, till every detail of it was stamped on their brains and came through on the other side like the faces of a bad coinage.
If I had not accepted the invitation to dine at 27.
Mrs. Darling said.
If only I had not poured my medicine into Nana's bowl.
Said Mr. Darling.
Got a
And
little
if
baby
only
girl.
I'd pretended to like the medicine.
Was what Nana's
Melted
wet
butter
eyes.
pop.
I was just gonna say that was the pudding pop.
Yeah. Was what Nana's wet eyes said. Well,
Am I like him for parties, George?
My fatal gift for humor, dearest.
Why touching us about trifles, dear master and mistress? Pretend to be from Kensington Palace.
master and
Where this weekend.
And I was going to go for Scooby-Doo, but you know. Roro Reggie.
them
We
one
passed, didn't she?
them one or more of them would break down altogether. Nana at the thought.
It's true. They ought not to have had a dog for a nurse.
Many a time it was Mr. Darling who had put the handkerchief to Nana's eyes.
That fiend.
Mr. Darling would cry, and Nana's bark was the echo of it. But Mrs. Darling never upbraided Peter. There was something in the right corner of her mouth that wanted her not to call Peter's names. How many names he got?
Oh,
And why is she calling out his name, if you know what I mean?
well, I'm just saying. It was just
Oh, Peter!
she kept it in the corner of her mouth. I'm
Peter's
just saying.
shadow.
They would sit in the empty nursery, recalling fondly every smallest detail of that dreadful evening. It had begun so uneventfully, so precisely, like 100 other evenings, with Nana putting on the water for Michael's bath and carrying him to it on her back.
That's a heck of a dog.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Pale dog.
that's
Except
you,
Michael.
Kaiser.
Yeah.
the boy.
All right.
Oh, the boy.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah, I can go ahead and
that's
take
Michael.
that one.
Okay. I won't go to bed.
He had shouted like one who still believed that he had the last word on the subject.
I won't, Nana. It isn't 6 o'clock yet. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. I shan't love you anymore, Nana. I tell you, I want to be bathed. I won't.
A little dramatic, isn't he? Then Mrs. Darling would come in wearing her white evening gown. Yes, she was.
Mhm.
She had dressed early because Wendy so loved to see her in the evening gown. With the necklace George had given her, pearl necklace, she was wearing Wendy's bracelet on her arm. She had asked for the loan of it. Wendy loved to lend her bracelet to her mother. She had found the two other children playing at being herself and father on the occasion of Wendy's birth, and John was saying,
I'm happy.
Mrs.
Go
Darling.
ahead.
I don't know. Okay.
Go ahead. No, you
"Go
got
ahead,
it.
Kaiser."
Okay. Yeah. I'm happy to doing for you, Mrs. Darling, that you're now a mother.
In just such a tone as Mr. Darling himself may have used on the real occasion. Wendy had danced with joy just as the real Mrs. Darling must have done. Then John was born, and the extra pomp that he conceived due to the birth of a male, and Michael came from his bath to ask to be born also.
Oh my God.
But
What
John,
is happening?
Jesus,
What? Where did they come out?
Lord, I apologize.
How are they imitating
Make
this?
me stand Nick give me, amen.
Oh my
But John said
gosh.
rudely that they did not want any more.
Oh,
Michael had nearly cried. Just,
Nobody wants me.
he said, and of course the lady in the evening dress could not stand that.
I do. I
She-
so want a third child.
Boy or girl?
Asked Michael, not too hopefully.
A boy.
Then he had leapt into her arms, such a little thing for Mr. and Mrs. Darling and Nana to recall now, but not so little as if it was to be Michael's last night in the nursery. They go on with their recollections.
It was then that I rushed in like a tomato.
No, this is Mr.
That's,
Darling.
that's Kaiser.
guys,
Yeah, sorry, I was upright dating something there. It was then I rushed in like a tornado, wasn't it?
Mr. Darling would say, scorning himself, and indeed he had been like a tornado.
He just tore it up.
Tow it up.
Turn up like a damn trailer park on a Tuesday after. Yeah, never mind.
This England or Oklahoma? Perhaps there was some excuse for him. He too had been dressing for the party, and it all had gone well with him until he came to do his tie. It is an astounding thing to have to tell, but this man, though he knew about stocks and shares, had no real mastery of his tie. Sometimes the thing yielded to him without a contest. But there were occasions when it would have been better for the house if he had swallowed his pride and used a made-up tie. This was such an occasion. He came rushing into the nursery with a crumpled little brute of a tie in his hand.
Why, what is the matter, dear father?
Matter?
He yelled. He really yelled.
This tie. It will not tie.
He became dangerously sarcastic.
Not round my neck, round the bedpost. Oh, yes, 20 times I have made it up. Round the bedpost. But round my neck, no. Dear, no. Begs to be excused.
And that's why you have 3 kids.
Yeah.
Around the bedpost.
Red horse.
Oh, my.
He thought Mrs. Darling was not sufficiently impressed, and he went on sternly.
I warn you of this, mother, that unless this tie is round my neck, we don't go out to dinner tonight. And if I don't go out to dinner tonight, I can never go to the office again. And if I don't go to the office again, you and I starve, and all of our children will be flung out into the streets.
Sounds like fun.
Even then, Mrs. Darling was placid.
Let me try, dear.
She said, and indeed that was what he had come to ask her to do. And with her nice, cool hand, she tied his tie for him, while the children stood around to see their fate decided. Some men would have resented her being able to do it so easily, but Mr. Darling had far too fine a manner for that. He thanked her carelessly and at once forgot his rage, and in another moment was dancing around the room with Michael on his back.
How wildly we romped.
Says Mrs. Darling now, recalling it.
Our last romp.
Oh,
Mr. Darling groaned. Of course he groaned. It was the last romp.
You ain't getting none more.
I'd cut it off right there. Wellesley.
Uh,
Oh, George.
okay. No, not me. Oh. Sorry. I apologize.
You're
Oh,
fine.
George, do you remember Michael suddenly said to me,
How did you get to know my mother?
That was rather sweet, don't you think, George?
And they were ours. Ours. And now they're gone.
The romp had ended with the appearance of Nana, and most unluckily, Mr. Darling collided against her, covering his trousers with hairs.
Wow.
Nothing worse than the dog watching.
This family's freaky.
For real, man. Talk about tying stuff to bedposts and getting dog hairs all over you.
And he's romping with somebody, and all of a sudden they get a dog.
Yeah, and that was the last romp. Jeez, way to go out with a bang. There were not only new trousers, but they were the first he had ever had with a braid on them, and he had to bite his lip to prevent the tears coming. Of course, Mrs. Darling brushed him, but he began to talk again about its mistake to have a dog for a nurse.
I thought I'm lost.
Where it says George.
George, Nana is a treasure. Wallstrom, thank you. George, Nana is a treasure.
No doubt, but I have an uneasy feeling at times that he looks upon the children as puppies.
Oh, no, dear one. I feel she knows they have souls.
I wonder.
Mr. Darling said thoughtfully.
I wonder.
It was an opportunity his wife felt for telling him about the boy. At first, he poo-pooed the story, but he became thoughtful when she showed him the shadow.
It is nobody I know,
He said, examining it carefully.
but it does look like a scoundrel.
We were still discussing it, do you remember?
Says Mr. Darling.
Oh, wait, that
Oh.
was him? Oh, I guess that was me. Okay.
It was you,
We were
Sorry.
still discussing it, you remember?
says Mr. Darling.
When Nana came in with Michael's medicine, you will never carry the bottle in your mouth again, Nana, and it is all my fault.
Strong man though he was, there is no doubt that he had behaved rather foolishly over the medicine. If he had a weakness, it was for thinking that all of his life had taken medicine boldly. And so now, when Michael dodged the spoon in Nana's mouth, he had said reprovingly,
Be a man, Michael.
I won't.
Michael cried naughtily. Mrs. Darling left the room to get a chocolate for him, and Mr. Darling thought this showed want of firmness.
Mother, don't pamper him.
He called after her.
Michael, when I was your age, I took medicine without a murmur. I said, thank you, kind parents, for giving me bottles to make me well.
He really thought this was true, and Wendy, who is now in her nightgown, believed it also, and she said to encourage Michael,
Well, that medicine you sometimes take, Father, it's much nastier, isn't it?
Ever so much nastier.
Mr. Darling said bravely.
And I would take it now as an example to you, Michael, if I hadn't lost the bottle.
He had not exactly lost it. He had climbed in the dead of night to the top of the wardrobe and hidden it there. What he did not know was that the faithful Liza had found it and put it back on his washstand.
Oh, I know where it is, Father.
Wendy cried, always glad to be of service.
Oh,
So
bring
helpful.
it.
So
Oh,
helpful.
Oh, Father, I'll bring it.
And she was off before he could stop her. Immediately, his spirits sank in the strangest way.
John,
He said, shuddering.
it's most beastly stuff. That is nasty, sticky, sweet kind. Oh, my God. Well, I'm changing this voice for the rest of the story.
It was
With a hint of pineapple.
John said cheerily, and then in rushed Wendy with the medicine in a glass.
Oh, I've been as quick as I could.
She panted.
Kaiser.
Come on,
Only
Kaiser.
the authors of the day knew.
Dude, I'm telling you.
All right.
He's having a wish.
You've been wonderfully quick.
Her father retorted with a vindictive politeness that was quite thrown away upon her.
Michael.
He said doggedly,
Kaiser.
"Oh, that's you. I thought you were
No,
Michael.
that's Michael. Oh, am I Michael?
You're Michael.
Yeah, you're the
Father Thirst.
said Michael, who was of a suspicious nature.
I shall be sick, you know.
Mr. Darling said threateningly,
Come on, Father.
said John.
Don't you sound John.
His father rapped out. Wendy was quite puzzled.
I thought you took it quite easily, Father.
Just take a deep breath. It's going to pinch you.
As long as you have the right medicine, it'll go in smoothly.
I'm going to go back to the leeches.
The leeches.
That's
Uh,
the point.
he retorted.
The point is that there is more in my glass than Michael's.
His proud heart was nearly bursting.
It isn't fair, I would say. With my last breath, it isn't fair.
Father, I'm waiting.
Hell?
It's all very well to say you're waiting, so am I waiting.
Father's a cowardly custard.
Sorry. Oh. Okay, I am so lost at this point.
I'm not frightened. I'm not frightened.
I don't know what voice am I doing for this?
your dad.
The
Your
man,
dad
the
again.
father.
Okay. Neither am I frightened.
Well, then take it.
Well, then you take it.
Wendy had a splendid idea.
Oh, why don't you both take it at the same time?
Wow. Mm.
Oh, geez.
That's you, Mr. Darling.
I'm sorry. I just read that.
Oh, we didn't hear you.
Didn't hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. Certainly. I'll
Said
be
Mr.
ready, Michael.
Wendy gave the words 1, 2, 3, and Michael took his medicine, but Mr. Darling slipped it behind his back. There was a yell of rage from Michael, and
Oh, Father.
Wendy exclaimed,
Oh, Father.
"Oh,
What do you mean by old father?
Mr. Darling demanded.
Not that row, Michael. I meant to take mine, but I missed it.
It was dreadful the way all. It was dreadful the way all the three were looking at him, just as if they did not admire him.
Now look here, all of you.
He said entrenchingly, as soon as Nana had gone into the bathroom.
I have just thought of a splendid joke. I shall pour my medicine into Nana's bowl, and she will drink it, thinking it's milk.
It was the color of milk, but the children did not have their father's sense of humor, and they looked at him reproachfully as he poured the medicine into Nana's bowl.
What fun!
he said doubtfully, and they did not dare expose him when Mrs. Darling and Nana returned.
Nana, good dog.
He said, petting her.
I've put a little milk into your bowl, Nana.
Nana wagged her tail, ran to the medicine, and began lapping it. Then she gave Mr. Darling such a look, not an angry look. She showed him the great red tear that makes us so sorry for noble dogs, and crept into her kennel. Mr. Darling was frightfully ashamed of himself, but he would not give in. In a horrid silence, Mrs. Darling smelt the bowl.
Oh, George,
She said,
it's your medicine.
"It's weed."
Only a joke.
Well, sorry, then. Pass it to the left hand side. Pass it to the left hand side. No.
Already read.
I didn't hear it.
He said it's only a joke.
Oh,
I already read that.
He roared while he comforted her. While she comforted her boys and went to hug Nana,
Much good.
he said bitterly.
My wearing myself to the bone trying to be funny in this house.
And still Wendy hugged Nana.
That's right.
He shouted.
Coddle her. Nobody coddles me. Oh, dear, no. I'm only the breadwinner. Why should I be coddled? Why?
George,
Mrs. Darling entreated him.
not so loud. The servants will hear you.
Somehow they had gotten all the way of calling Liza the servants.
Let them.
He answered recklessly.
Bring in the whole world, but I refuse to allow that dog to lord it in my nursery from an hour longer.
Oh, and then the children wept.
Oh.
And Nana ran to him beseechingly, but he waved her back. He felt he was a strong man again.
In vain,
He cried.
The proper place for you is in the yard. And there you go to be tied up this instant.
He's talking to the dog, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Mm-hmm.
not
The wife.
Not-
Mrs.
Not
Not the-
Mrs.
Not the missus.
Darn it.
Welsh.
Well,
I don't know where I am. I'm lost.
George.
right here.
I thought I said that already.
Did you?
No.
Did I not?
No.
Nope.
Your future self said it.
George.
Mrs. Darling whispered.
Remember what I told you about that boy? Sorry, my mistake.
Alas, he would not listen. He was determined to show who was the master in that house, and when commands would not draw Nana from the kennel, he lured her out with honeyed words, and seizing her roughly, dragged her from the nursery. He was ashamed of himself, and yet he did it. It was all owing to his too affectionate nature, which craved for admiration. When he had tied her up in the backyard, the wretched father went and sat in the passage with his knuckles to his eyes. In the meantime, Mrs. Darling had put the children to bed in unwonted silence and lit their night lights. They could hear Nana barking, and John whimpered.
It's because he's chasing her up in the yard.
But Wendy was wiser.
That's not Nana's unhappy bark.
She said, little guessing what was about to happen.
That is her bark when she smells danger.
Danger.
Are you sure, Wendy?
Oh, yes.
Mrs. Darling quivered and went to the window. It was securely fastened. She looked out, and the night was peppered with stars. They were crowding round the house as if curious to see what was to take place there. But she did not notice this, nor that one or two, the smaller ones, winked at her. Yet a nameless fear clutched at her heart and made her cry.
Oh, how I wish that I wasn't going to a party tonight.
Even Michael, already half asleep, knew that she was perturbed, and he asked,
Can anything harm us, Mother, after the night lights are all lit?
Nothing precious.
she said.
They are the eyes a mother leaves behind her to guard her children.
She went from bed to bed, singing enchantments over them, and little Michael flung his arms around her.
Mother,
He cried.
I'm glad of you.
They were the last words she was to hear from him for a long time.
Ominous.
Number 27 was only a few yards distant, but there had been a slight fall of snow, and Mother and Father Darling picked their way over it deftly not to soil their shoes. They were already the only persons in the street, and all the stars were watching them. Stars are beautiful, but they may not take an active part in anything. They must just look on it forever. It is a punishment put on them for something they did a long time ago that no star knows now what it was. So the older ones have become glassy-eyed and seldom speak. Winking is their star language. But the little ones still wonder. They are not really friendly to Peter, who had a mischievous way of stealing up behind them and trying to blow them out. Ew. But they are so fond of fun that they were on his side tonight and anxious to get to the grown-ups out of the way. So as soon as the door 27 closed on Mr. and Mrs. Darling's, there was a commotion in the firmament, and the smallest of all the stars in the Milky Way screamed out.
Oh, Peter!
All right, next.
Do you want to take over there, Yamaha?
Sure. Chapter 3. So I'm sailing away. No.
Come sail away with me. You get.
For a moment after Mr. and Mrs. Darling left the house, the night lights by the bed of the children continued to burn clearly. They were awfully nice little night lights, and one cannot help wishing they could could have kept awake to see Peter. But Wendy's light blinked and gave such a yawn that the other two yawned also, and before they could close their mouths, all three went out. There was another light on in the room now, 1,000 times brighter than the night lights. And in the time we have taken to say this, it had been in all the drawers in the nursery, looking for Peter's shadow, rummaged the wardrobe, and turned every pocket inside out. It was not really a light. It made this light by flashing about so quickly, but when it came to rest for a second, you saw it was a fairy. No longer than your hand, but still growing. It's a fairy, I swear. It's magical. It's my magic
Sparkles.
wand. It
Fairy,
sparkles.
is it now? Yes.
Bedazzled. It was a girl called Tinkerbell, exquisitely gowned in a skeleton leaf, cut low and square, through which her figure could be seen to the best advantage. Side boob. She was slightly inclined to embonpoint. A moment after the fairy's entrance, the window was blown open by the breathing of the little stars, and Peter dropped in. He had carried Tinkerbell part of the way, and his hand was still messy with the fairy.
If that's what you want to call it.
That's what I'm going to start calling it too, fairy dust. Oh, honey, it's just fairy dust.
Tinkerbell, he called softly after making sure the children were asleep. Tink, where are you? She was in a jug for the moment and liking it extremely. She's getting all liquored up.
She's an alcoholic. She was in the jug.
She had never been in a jug before. She's loose and it's her first time out drinking. Oh, do come out of that jug and tell me, do you know where they put my shadow? The loveliest tinkle as of gold bells answered him. It is the fairy language. You ordinary children can never hear it, but if you were to hear it, you would know that you heard it once before. Tink said the shadow was in the big box. She made the chest of drawers, and Peter jumped to the drawers, scattering their contents to the floor with both hands, as kings toss halfpence to the crowd. In a moment he had recovered his shadow, and in his delight he forgot that he had shut Tinker Bell up in the drawer.
She kind of liked it.
Yeah.
Like Diva in the closet.
That's right. She prefers not knowing what's going on until it happens.
She pretends to fight back. But we all know.
We know better.
If he thought at all, but I don't believe he ever thought, it was that he and his shadow, when brought nearer to each other, would join like the drops of water. And when they did not, he was appalled. He tried to stick it out with soap from the bath. Oh, wait a minute. He tried to stick it on with soap from the bathroom, but that also failed.
Try turtle wax.
Just don't use the shampoo.
It beads up in the shower.
A shudder passed through Peter, and he sat on the floor and cried. His sobs woke Wendy, and she sat up in bed. She was not alarmed to see a stranger crying on the nursery floor. She was only...
What the hell goes on in the house? You're not freaked out by a stranger in your
doesn't
floor?
freak her out at all. Yeah.
No, the boys always cry on my floor.
Yeah.
It leaves me with even more weird implications.
Not only was she not alarmed, she was also only pleasantly interested. That's her favorite game. Tonight we're going to play stranger.
Make them cry.
Yeah. I'll be the helpless girl and you be the cat burglar.
Let's play a little game called Make the Stranger Cry.
I'll kick you with the fairy dust.
There's fairy dust everywhere now.
Boy,
She said courteously.
oh, why are you crying?
Peter could be exceeding polite also, having learned the grand manner at fairy ceremonies, and he rose and bowed to her beautifully. She was much pleased and bowed beautifully to him from the bed. What is your name? He asked.
What's your favorite color?
What is your favorite color?
What is the airspeed velocity of a laden swallow?
What is the capital of Assyria?
It's Wendy.
I don't know that.
Moria, Angela, darling.
She replied with some satisfaction.
What is your name?
Peter Pan. She was already sure that he must be Peter, but it did seem a comparatively short name.
Is that all?
Your voice is awful deep, Peter.
I know. Well, I am a perpetual 13-year-old.
Exactly.
I don't drink that soy shit.
I drink a lot of whiskey for a 13-year-old.
I switched to menthols in 76.
Yeah. She was already sure that he must be Peter, but it did seem a comparatively short name. Oh, I already read that. Short name. Okay.
Oh, is that all?
Yes, he said rather sharply. He felt for the first time that it was a shortish name.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Said Wendy, Moira, Angela. Oh, it doesn't matter, Peter gulped. She asked where he lived. Second to the right, said Peter, and then straight on till morning.
What a funny address.
Peter had a sinking. For the first time he felt that perhaps it was a funny address. No, it isn't, he said.
Well, I mean,
Wendy said nicely, remembering that she was hostess.
is that what they put on the letters?
He wished that she had not mentioned letters. Don't get any letters, he said contemptuously.
But your mother gets letters?
No, I don't have a mother, he said. Not only had he no mother. He had no mother. I'm motherless. Hey, no mother. You're rich.
You're having no mutter. That is so sad.
My mutter. Well, not only had he had no mother, but he had not the slightest desire to have one. He thought them very overrated persons. Wendy, however, felt at once that she was in the presence of a tragedy. Yeah, no shit.
Ja, mein Liebchen.
Oh, Peter. No, I don't know. I've lost my accent.
You keep
somewhere.
going back and forth.
I do. I'm Scottish.
You're
I'm
British. You're
I'm
British.
Kensington, darling, Kensington.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
Peter. No wonder you're crying.
She said, and got out of bed and ran to him. I wasn't crying about mothers, he said rather indignantly. I was crying because I can't get my shadow to stick on. Besides, I wasn't crying.
Oh, it has come off.
Yes. Then Wendy saw the shadow on the floor, looking so draggled, and she was frightfully sorry for Peter.
How awful.
She said, but she could not help smiling when she saw that he had been trying to stick it on with soap. How exactly like a boy. Fortunately, she knew at once what to do.
Oh, it must be sewn on.
She said, just a little patronizingly. What's sewn? He asked.
You're dreadfully ignorant.
Well,
You would.
fuck you, lady. I'm going to some other strange girl's house.
You ignorant. You ignorant.
I'm out of this shithole.
Man, I've been trying to tell you, you's ignorant.
You dumb. You really, really dumb.
For real.
I didn't come breaking into your house to be talked to this way. No, I'm not. But she was exulting in his ignorance.
Oh, I shall sew it on for you, my little man.
She said,
Little man.
gosh, she just berating this poor
Cut
guy
to the
all over
bone,
the place.
man.
Wow.
Jeez.
Jesus. Though he was tall as herself. And she got out of, and she got out her housewife and sewed the shadow onto Peter's foot.
I dare say it will hurt a little.
She warned him, and he took a deep breath, waiting for the pinch. Oh, I shan't cry, said Peter, who was already of the opinion that he had never cried in his life. And he clenched his teeth, gritted and bared it, and did not cry.
And waited for that
shadow,
feeling.
yeah, and soon his shadow was behaving properly, although his brown eye ached, though still a little creased.
Well, perhaps I should have ironed it.
Wendy said thoughtfully. But Peter, boylike, was indifferent to appearances, and he was now jumping about in the wildest glee. Alas, he had already forgotten that he owed his bliss to Wendy. He thought he had attached the shadow himself. How clever I am, he crowed rapturously. Oh, the cleverness of me. Yeah, you're a fucking genius.
Dumb motherfucker.
No.
No wonder you ignorant.
Yeah.
Ignorant.
You stupid mother... It is humiliating to have to confess that this conceit of Peter was one of his most fascinating qualities. To put it with brutal frankness, there never was a cockier boy.
Hey.
Standing there all proud and stiff and strong.
I feel like this is the story of Expert in White Rabbit.
Yeah.
It sounds like it.
But for the moment, Wendy was shocked.
You conceit.
She exclaimed with frightful sarcasm.
Of course, I did nothing.
Oh, you did a little, Peter said carelessly, and continued to dance.
A little?
She replied with hauteur.
If I am no use, I can at least withdraw.
And she
All right.
Wait a minute.
She's pulling away from him. Wow.
I didn't know where there were toys involved.
She just popped that thing right out.
Like, well, that's how I feel.
And she sprang in the most dignified way into bed and covered her face with the blankets. To induce her to look up, he pretended to be going away. She likes a tease. And when this failed, he sat on the end of the bed and tapped her gently with his foot. "Wendy," he said, "don't withdraw. I'm almost there. I can't help crowing, Wendy. When I'm pleased with myself." I'm getting all mushroomy in here.
Oh, God.
Oh, my God.
I'm so pleased with myself.
Oh.
Cock-a-doodle-doo.
Still, she would not look up, though she was listening eagerly. "Wendy," he continued in a voice that no woman has ever yet been able to resist.
Hello, Ruthie.
Oh, Wendy. One girl is more use than 20 boys. What the fuck?
What?
I want peace choice.
One girl is more use than 20 boys. I should fucking hope to think so.
Well, depends on your persuasion.
Wow.
Whoa.
Depends on whether you got Tinkerbell
Oh my God.
with dust all over you.
Jesus.
Oh,
Now, Wendy was every inch a woman. Though there were not very many inches.
Dude, back then they married at 12 and she's 14. I'm just saying.
I really wanted Beast Voice to come out then.
Wendy Bird said
Oh,
it is a
my
nice
God.
voice.
Yeah, wow.
It's a nice voice.
And she peeped out of the bedclothes.
Oh, do you really think so, Peter?
Oh, yeah, I do.
That's nice.
I think it's perfectly sweet of you.
She declared.
And I'll get up again.
And she sat with him on the side of the bed. She also said she would give him a kiss if he liked. But Peter did not know what she meant, and he held out his hand expectantly, waiting for the reach around.
Is it bad that I didn't realize for a second there that might not be something that's actually right?
Surely you know what it is.
She
Surely.
asked. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I didn't know if I was heard. Surely you know what a kiss is.
She asked, aghast.
Well, and you know what he says? He says, "Do you know the difference between a kiss and a blowjob?"
This might be code. Just saying.
I
Sound like
shall
you're
know.
fighting with the dog.
I shall know when you give it to me, he replied stiffly. And not to hurt his feelings, she gave him a thimble because Trojans hadn't been invented yet.
Trojan man.
Well, no, a thimble was the size he needed.
Oh,
This
my.
is about all you'll need. Here you go.
A thimble.
Now, said he, shall I give you a kiss? And she replied with a slight primness.
If you please.
She made herself rather cheap.
Okay.
Oh, behind all that prudeness, she's a hoe. She's a hoe.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Hey,
she's a
both
dirty
hoes.
girl. Soap runs away from her. By inclining her face toward him. But he merely dropped an acorn button into her hand. So she slowly returned her face to where it had been before and said nicely that she would wear his kiss on the chain around her neck. It was lucky that it fit on that pearl necklace. It was lucky that she did put it on that chain, for it was afterwards to save her life. All right, guys, are you want to read some?
Okay, sure. Okay.
Right here.
Okay. Well, there we go. When people in our set are introduced, it is customary for them to ask each other's age. And so Wendy, who has always liked to do the correct thing, asked Peter how old he was. It was not really a happy question to ask him. It was like an examination paper that asked grammar. What you want to be asked is Kings of England. What the hell is the way of that?
I don't know.
He replied uneasily.
But I am quite young.
He really knew nothing about it. He had merely suspicions, but he said it was a virtue.
Wendy, I ran away the day I was born. Because that's something most babies can do. I was a gifted child.
Fetus, what is this? Wendy was quite surprised, but interested. And she indicated in the charming drawing room manner by a touch on her nightgown that he could sit near her.
It was because I heard father and mother,
he explained in a low voice,
talking about what I was to be when I became a man.
He was extraordinarily agitated now.
I don't ever want to be a damn man.
He said with passion.
I want always to be a little boy and to have fun. So I ran away to Kensington Gardens and lived a long, long time among the fairies.
Oh, my.
I like it in San Francisco.
Yeah. Oh, Lord. I can't believe that just came out of me. All right, fine.
What? I think we
Hello?
lost.
We lost Lost.
Oh, no.
He'll be back.
Oh,
No.
Okay.
Oh, no. Well, she's still here.
She-
Gotcha.
She gave him a look of the most intense admiration, and he thought it was because he had run away. But it was really because he knew fairies. Wendy had lived such a home life that to know fairies struck her as quite delightful. He poured out questions about them to his surprise, for they were rather a nuisance to him, getting in his way and so on. And indeed,
cock blockers.
he sometimes had to give them a hiding.
Is that what you call it?
They're always
Paging
after
Mr.
me.
Pancake. Mr. Pancake. Hiding fairies in your trousers? Still, he liked them on the whole.
Yeah, I'm sure he did.
He did. And he told her about the beginning of fairies.
You see, Wendy, when the first baby laughed for the first time, its laugh broke into 1,000 pieces, and they all went skipping about, and that was the beginning of fairies.
Tedious talk, this, but being a stay-at-home, she liked it.
And so,
he went on good-naturedly,
there ought to be one fairy for every boy and girl.
I'm trying not to laugh.
You get a fairy, and you get a fairy.
Everybody gets the fairy.
Isn't there?
No. You see, children know such a lot now. They soon don't believe in fairies. And every time a child says, I don't believe in fairies, there's a fairy somewhere that falls down dead.
Oh,
jeez.
My phone is going off.
His phone.
What?
Somebody's going to have to kick in and read.
Okay, I'll read. Really? He thought that they had now talked enough about fairies, and it struck him that Tinkerbell was keeping very
I'll be back,
quiet.
guys. I gotta go take care of something.
All right, brother.
I can't think where she has gone to,
he said, rising, and he called Tink by name. Wendy's heart went flutter with a sudden thrill.
Peter.
Oh.
She
Peter?
cried, clutching him.
You don't mean to tell me that there's a fairy in this room? I've lost my accent again. Sorry.
She was here just now.
He said a little impatiently.
You don't hear her, do you?
And they both listened.
The only sound I hear
Said Wendy.
is like a tinkle of bells.
Oh, well, that's Tink. That's the fairy language. I think I hear her too.
The sound came from the chest of drawers. Peter made a merry face. No one could ever quite look so merry as Peter, and the loveliest of gurgles was his laugh. He had his first laugh still.
Wendy!
He whispered gleefully.
I do believe I shut her up in the drawer.
That poor Tink out of the drawer, and she flew about the nursery, screaming with fury.
You shouldn't say such things.
Peter retorted.
Of course, I'm very sorry. But how could I know you were in the drawer?
Wendy was not listening to him.
Oh, Peter.
She cried.
If she would only stand still and let me see her.
No, they hardly ever stand still. I never get to see side boob anymore.
He said, but for one moment, Wendy saw the romantic figure coming to rest on the, I thought that said cock, on the cuckoo clock.
Cuckoo cock.
Oh, the lovely.
She cried, though Tink's face was still distorted with passion.
Tink,
said Peter amiably.
This lady says she wishes you were her fairy.
Tinkerbell answered insolently.
Every girl needs a gay friend.
What does she
I'm
say?
the straight one.
What did she say, Peter?
He had to translate.
She is not very polite. She says you are a great ugly girl, and that she is my fairy.
Tried to argue with Tink.
You know you can't be my fairy, Tink. You don't give it up anymore because I'm a gentleman and you're a lady.
To this, Tink replied in these words. Well,
wait a minute.
You silly ass.
Disappeared into the bathroom.
She is quite a common fairy.
Oh,
she's very cheap.
Common fairy.
She's that dollar on the street corner hooker.
Slap down.
She's a diamond. She's a tenant too.
She's not a high maintenance fairy. She's a common fairy.
Running around them stripper shoes and shit.
Peter explained apologetically.
She is called Tinkerbell because she mends the pots and kettles.
They were together in the armchair by this time, and Wendy plied him with more questions.
If you don't live in Kensington Gardens now.
We'll sit on my lap and we'll discuss the first thing that comes up. Sometimes I do still.
Where do you mostly live now?
With the Lost Boys.
Who are they?
They are the children who fall out of their perambulators when the nurse is looking the other way. If they are not claimed in 7 days, they are sent far away to the Neverland to defray expenses. I am captain.
Oh, what fun it must be.
Yes,
said the cunning Peter.
But we are rather lonely. You see, we have no female companionship, and we like to run trains.
Sounds like prison.
Sounds like that centipede pedal.
Grab all the white girls.
Are none of the others girls?
Oh, no. Girls, you know, are much too clever to fall out of their prams.
They flattered Wendy immensely.
I think,
she said,
it is perfectly lovely the way you talk about girls. John here just despises us.
For reply, Peter rose and kicked John out of bed, blankets and all. One kick. Well, this seemed to Wendy rather forward for a first meeting, and she told him with spirit that he was not the captain in her house. However, John continued to sleep so placidly on the floor. She allowed him to remain there.
That pudding pop kicked in.
He's a heavy sleeper, that Elmo.
And I know you meant to be kind.
She said relentingly.
So you may give me a kiss.
For the moment, she had forgotten his ignorance about kisses.
I already gave you a kiss, bitch. You're wearing it on your pearl necklace. I thought you would want it back.
He said a little bitterly and offered to return her the thimble.
Oh, dear.
Said the nice Wendy.
I don't mean a kiss. I mean a thimble.
What's that?
It's like this.
Oh! Help me! Help me! Oh! Not my golden britches!
Normally you have to pay a lot for that kind of action.
I was just so shocked. He was so forward.
Do it again.
Yeah. Could we play that again?
I don't think you got it right the first time. Could you try that again?
Oh, funny,
said Peter gravely.
Now I shall give you a thimble or a mushroom tip.
Thimble first.
If you wish to, Yes.
said Wendy, keeping her head erect
Oh, God.
this time.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Don't move your head around and no grating the teeth.
No teeth.
Peter thimbled her, and almost immediately she screeched.
Oh, it gets worse.
Ribbed for her pleasure, my ass.
Never mind. I don't want to know.
What is it, Wendy?
It was exactly as if someone were pulling my hair.
Oh, I thought you'd like a little donkey punch and a hair tug.
Oh my God.
Well, that must have been Tink. I never knew her to be so naughty before. I can't donkey punch her. She's too tiny.
but not for a lack of trying.
I know, right?
Indeed, Tink was darting about again, using offensive language.
She says she will. She says she will do that to you, Wendy, every time I give you a thimble.
But why?
Why, Tink?
You
Again.
silly ass. Sorry.
Peter could not understand why. But Wendy understood, and she was slightly disappointed when he admitted that he came to the nursery window not to see her, but to listen to stories.
You see, I don't know any stories. None of the lost boys knows any stories.
How perfectly awful.
Wendy said.
Do you know
Peter asked.
why swallows build in the eaves of your of houses? It is to listen to the stories. Oh, Wendy, your mother was telling you such a lovely story.
Oh, which story was it?
About the prince who couldn't find the lady who wore the glass slipper.
Peter,
Said Wendy excitedly.
that was Cinderella, and he found her, and they lived happily ever after.
Well, Peter was so glad that he rose from the floor where they had been sitting and hurried to the window.
What are you doing?
She cried with misgiving.
To tell the other boys.
Oh, don't go, Peter.
She entreated.
I know such lots of stories.
Oh,
Those
do you now?
Yeah.
Those were her
She has
precise
a lot
words.
of stories.
So there could be no denying that it was her that first tempted him.
See, right
Oh,
there.
he came back. Oh, he came back, and there was
Yeah,
a
he came back.
greedy look in his eyes now, which ought to have alarmed her. But oh no, it did not.
Oh, the stories I could tell to the boys.
She cried, and then Peter gripped her.
Dear
and began
Penthouse
to
Forum.
draw her towards the window.
Oh, let me go.
She ordered him.
No, but I thought you liked it rough, Wendy. Do come with me and tell the other boys.
Of course, she was very pleased to be asked, but she said,
Oh, dear, I can't. Think of Mommy. Besides, I can't fly.
I'll teach you.
Take your box with you.
Oh,
Little
how
bit of that,
lovely. How lovely to fly.
I'll teach you how to jump on the wing's back. And then we go. And then away we go.
Oh.
she exclaimed rapturously.
Wow. Oh, Wendy, when you moan at me like that, when you are sleeping in your silly bed, you might be flying about with me, saying funny things to the stars, moaning, screaming to God. Do it. Do it.
Oh.
That's not the ooh I wanted. And Wendy, there are mermaids.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Oh my god.
No, you might watch it.
Oh.
Oh.
And on the Lord's Day, no less.
Mermaids with tails.
Such long tails.
Oh, to see a mermaid.
He had become frightfully cunning.
Oh, Wendy.
He said,
How should we all respect you in the morning?
She was wiggling her body in distress. It was quite as if she were to remain on the nursery floor, but he had no pity for her.
Oh, Wendy.
He said, the sly one.
You could tuck us in at night. Just cram
does he
it
get
right
the
in
one
there.
now?
Nice and hard.
Oh.
None of us have ever been tucked in at night.
Oh.
And her arms went out to him.
And you could darn our clothes and make pockets for us. None of us has any pockets.
Oh, God.
And you could bedazzle your cave of wonders. That could be a pocket. A pistol pocket. A cock
How
holster.
could she
A
resist?
prison pocket.
Of course.
Oh, you gotta give it that
Awfully fascinating.
She cried.
Peter, would you teach John and Michael to fly too?
I'm not into boys. Fuck them. If you like.
Evidently, you're not. You have a whole crew of lost boys.
He said indifferently, and she ran to John and Michael and shook them up, and
Wake up.
she cried.
Peter Pan has come, and he is to teach us to fly.
John rubbed his eyes.
But they were sticky and closed, glued tightly.
Like spiderweb.
Pink dust.
Geyser.
Okay, I'm good. I rubbed his eyes, right?
Yeah.
Talk that up.
He said, of course, he was on the floor already.
Hello.
He said.
I'm up. Okay.
Michael was up by this time also, looking as sharp as a knife with 6 blades and a saw.
I'm going to cut you, bitch.
But Peter suddenly signed silence. Their faces assumed the awful craftiness of children listening for sounds from the grown-up world. All was as still as salt. And then everything was right. No, stop. Everything was wrong. Nana, who had been barking distressfully all the evening, was quiet now. It was her silence they had heard.
Over the light, hide, quick!
Cried John, taking command for the only time throughout the whole adventure. And thus, when Liza entered holding Nana, the nursery seemed quiet, quite its old self, very dark. And you would have sworn you heard its 3 wicked inmates breathing angelically as they slept. They were really doing it artfully from behind the window curtains. Liza was in a bad temper, for she was mixing the Christmas puddings in the kitchen.
Liza was an alcoholic.
And in walks
And it
Bill.
had been drawn from them with the raisins still on her cheek by none certain suspicion. She thought the best way of getting a little quiet was to take Nana to the nursery for a moment, but in custody, of course. Welsh?
There, you suspicious. Oh, it's Nana, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's Nana.
go ahead.
There, you suspicious brute.
She said, not sorry that Nana was in disgrace.
They are perfectly safe, aren't they? Every one of the little angels sound asleep in bed. Listen to their gentle breathing.
Here, Michael, encouraged by his success, breathed so loudly that they were nearly detected. Nana knew that kind of breathing, and she tried to drag herself out of Liza's clutches, but Liza was dense. No more. Sorry.
No more of it, Nana.
She said sternly, pulling her out of the room.
I warn you, if you bark again, I'll go straight for Master and Mrs. and bring them home from the party, and then, oh, won't Master whip you? Just
Bad dog.
She tied the unhappy dog up again. But do you think Nana ceased to bark? Bringing Master and Mrs. home from the party? Why, that was just what she wanted. Do you think she cared whether she was whipped so as long as her charges were safe? Unfortunately, Liza returned to her puddings, and Nana, seeing that no help would come from her, strained and strained at the chain until at last she broke it. In another moment, she had burst into the dining room of 27 and flung up her paws to heaven, her most expressive way of making a communication. Mr. and Mrs. Darling knew at once that something terrible was happening in their nursery, and without a goodbye to their hostess, they rushed into the street. But it was now 10 minutes past since 3 scoundrels had been breathing behind the curtains, and Peter Pan could do a great deal in 2 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. 10 minutes is a long time now.
Tear that up.
We now return to the nursery.
It's all right.
John announced, emerging from his hiding place.
I say, Peter, can you really fly?
Instead of troubling to answer him, Peter flew around the room, taking the mantelpiece on the way.
How topping.
Topping! Cried John and Michael.
How sweet.
Yes. I'm sweet.
Said Peter, forgetting his
Like a
manners.
lollipop.
He looked delightfully easy.
It doesn't take a whole lot.
Tried it first from the floor and then from the beds, but they always went down instead of up.
I say, how do you do it?
Asked John, rubbing his knee. Well, you don't rub your knee, that's for sure. He was quite a practical boy.
That's not how you go from down to up. You don't rub your knee.
Yeah, you don't rub your knee.
Well, you just think lovely, wonderful thoughts and Playboy centerfolds.
Dear penthouse form.
Peter explained.
And they lift you up in the air.
He showed him again.
You're so nippy at it.
That's why I wear my little Santa hat.
Oh,
John said.
when you do it very slowly.
Nay, nay, for I am like a little bunny rabbit.
And this is why John doesn't like girls.
Peter did it both slowly and quickly. Cried John, but soon he found he had not. Not one of them could fly an inch. Not even Michael in his words of 2 syllables. And Peter did not know A from Z. Of course, Peter had been trifling with them, for no one can fly unless the fairy dust has been blown up to him.
Close your eyes. Here comes the fairy dust.
Put these goggles on.
Oh, it's all over my face. Oh.
I'm so glad I didn't take a drink before you did that. I mean, all over my computer.
Fortunately, as we have mentioned, one of his hands was messy with it. And so he blew something, one of them, with the most superb results.
Now, Just wiggle your shoulders this way. And let go. Don't fight it. It only makes it worse.
Oh, they were all on their
Just go
beds.
with it. Just go.
And gallant Michael let go first. He
Mm.
did not quite mean to let go, but he did. And immediately he was borne across the room.
There was fairy dust everywhere.
He screamed while still in midair. And John let go and met Wendy near the bathroom.
Oh, lovely.
Oh,
Look at me!
Look at me.
Look at me! Look at me!
But they were not nearly so elegant as Peter because he'd been doing it so long. They could not help kicking a little, but their heads were bobbing against the ceiling. There was almost nothing so delicious as that.
That's why you need a helmet, like Shizzy.
This is worse than a headboard.
Oh. Peter gave Wendy a hand at first, but then he just stick it to a couple of fingers. Tink was so
That's all it
indignant.
took.
Up and down they went, and round and round. Heavenly was Wendy's word,
oh, so
cried John.
what's in
Of course, it was to this that Peter had been luring them. Michael was ready, but he wanted to see how long it took him to do 1,000,000,000 miles. But Wendy hesitated.
Mermaids.
Said Peter again.
Oh.
And there are pirates.
I thought he said I thought he would say panties. I was like, what?
Schooner. And some pervert with a hook on his hand.
You replace the hook with something else.
With the button pop.
Go ahead, Kaiser.
Oh, I thought okay. Okay. Let us go at once.
What were? Oh yeah. Oh, it was just at this moment that Mr. and Mrs. Darling hurried with Nana out of 27. They ran into the middle of the street to look up at the nursery window, and yes, it was still shut, but the room was ablaze with light. And most heart-gripping sight of all, they could see in the shadow on the curtain 3 little figures in night attire, circling round and round, not on the floor, but in the air. Not 3 figures, 4. In a tremble, they opened the street door. Mr. Darling would have rushed upstairs, but Mrs. Darling signed him to go softly. She even tried to make her heart go softly. Will they reach the nursery in time? If so, how delightful for them, and we shall all breathe a sigh of relief, but there will be no story. On the other hand, if they are not in time, I solemnly promise that it will all come right in the end. They would have reached the nursery in time had it not been that the little stars were watching them. Once again, the stars blew the window open, and that smallest star of all called out,
Cave Peter!
Then Peter knew that there was not a moment to lose.
Come!
He cried imperiously and soared out at once into the night, followed by John and Michael and Wendy. Mr. and Mrs. Darling and Nana rushed into the nursery too late. The birds were flown. That ends us right before chapter 4. Oh my God.
Perfect timing. Perfect timing.
Right. Now we're getting to the good part.
Oh my God.
And
It's going to be all kinds of fairy dust flying around.
There's fairy dust everywhere. It's so sticky.
I've been laughing so much my abs hurt.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh Lord.
Oh
It started out slow, then began to grow. It's like a weird
love
Dr.
you,
Seuss
Welsh
story.
lady reads. Good to see your face. But I've got something for all you guys. I've got to break out the wonderful helmet here before we go reading.
Yes.
I got the hat.
Yeah.
we've just got a few super chats, so we will give you the glorious first star of the evening right here down here. Oh yeah. Welcome, Phoenix. Thank you for being here for 9 months. Hello and good evening to all. And then we've got, I needed to pick me up, so I came by here to laugh. Well, I hope that we did not disappoint, Tammy. We enjoy making people laugh and cry. Hopefully they're tears of joy. Hopefully. Or pleasure.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
This is so painful.
Love you, Welsh Lady Reed. Good to see your face. Oh, yes. Welsh Lady is an absolute sweetheart. That one's for you right there. I'm working on one side of the helmet right now. It's going to end up a little lopsided, but that's okay. Because Sorry I'm Late was watching What the Hales. That's okay. That's okay. Come back for the rewatch. The rewatch is so much fun too, because then you get to rewatch it over and over and over again. That's you right there. Thank you very much.
Whether you like it or not, we are now here forever.
Oh my gosh.
Remember, if you think it's that it ended too quickly, you can always go back and do it again.
Do it again.
You sure got a lot of babies do this much shows. Well, thank you very much. That one's for you. Got it right there. So someone made a suggestion that I thought was pretty neat, and I'll bring it up later. They said after all the stuff is done with Bubbles, that I should auction off the helmet.
Yes.
For me to auction off. I think that would be pretty cool, and then have that go to some good charitable cause. I think that would be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Definitely.
Maybe from
Lemons to lemonade, that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh my gosh. And yes. Yeah, smart idea. Yeah, somebody else mentioned that. I don't know if they mentioned that in my where they mentioned it at, but they did mention it. It was either in a chat on one of the streams or something like that. Oh, that was. I like this version better. I hope so. I mean, this isn't no Disney movie. I'm telling you.
Hey, no, it's Disney without all that damn singing.
That one right there is for you. Got one right there. Oh, a little bit of a bent star there, but you're right there.
Yeah, it's probably to the left.
Do you think that would be awesome, having it completely covered with stars everywhere?
Yes.
Like I think that.
Well on the way.
Starry helmet.
Yeah, I mean, it gets sparkly.
It is good sparkly.
Every little bit of padding helps.
I don't know, maybe.
Shizzy runs into a tree and half the stars come off.
We gotta preserve what's left.
There was much there in the first place.
He sparkled the tree.
Sparkled it
It
with
is
fairy
easier to
dust.
find him at night when he's out running around.
There's fairy dust everywhere.
Nobody move. Look for the glint.
There must be not in that tree.
That wasn't the way I was expecting.
Everybody.
Oh, you're fine,
Bring it
Mary.
by
Yeah.
We've hit our 2-hour mark. I want to say that tomorrow morning there will be a morning stream. I'm getting things set up in the background. There will be a morning stream. It'll be just a little bit of news, and after that stream ends, I'm going to go eat some breakfast, get myself prepared, because the inauguration will be happening.
Yeah, you're gonna.
And I've got a lot planned tomorrow for the inauguration. So one, I'm gonna be working on some new songs. I'm gonna try to get 7 done. We'll see how that works out. We're going to be watching some of the confirmation hearings of Bondi and Hedgeseth, and I'll probably have quite a few guests coming in, popping in, leaving, coming in, going out. It'll just be a fun-filled day of really interesting stuff. So look forward to that. I've already got that one queued up to show. So just come in whenever you feel like, listen to it, leave, hang out, shoot the shit. Just, put more stars on the helmet. It's going to be really a good time. I'm looking forward to it. And in the meantime, anything from the rest of you fine folks, let us know what you've got going on.
Nothing. I have nothing. I'll start first. I have nothing.
Okay.
Well, I'm usually here, so.
No. And I just pop up. Well, whenever I pop up.
Oh.
Ew.
Whenever the mood strikes me.
Whenever you're all out of fairy dust, there I am.
Oh.
There you go. Well, I have like my usual stuff, and then I'm planning a few game streams here and there. Probably doing a bit of a thing to try and help grease the wheels, get me to Dollywood. I might do a little Christmas so closer toward Valentine's. It's a little lonely. So have some fun with that.
Well,
And I
cool.
just reading some. I've just done one this week, some Welsh folklore, and I can go back into my channel again because I've had a long break off. So trying to increase it.
Very good.
Most definitely. Yeah. And I'm going to send all you fine folks over to go watch some baby goats. Make sure you give them some subs and smack that thumbs up and put some goats in the chat for them. Everybody have a wonderful,
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Thank you for being here.
Bye.
Sleep well.